Hello everybody, in this new series of videos I'd like to share with you some of my personal stories. Now these are mainly some very bizarre experiences or some interesting characters I've met. For example, one time I was almost eaten by a pelican and got punched to death by a group of kangaroos. Or it could be the time I had to spend a night in a haunted house in the middle of a small island. Or it could be how I was mistaken for a fraud by my favourite writer in a cafe just near my home. Just to name a few so you can see it's very interesting. And the whole purpose of these videos is to first let you know a bit more about me, and hopefully I can give you some comprehensible input for your language acquisition. And if you're an interpreting student, you can use these as your training material. Today let's start with my former Indian co-worker, brother Chubby. Now, for those of you who don't know about me, before I started interpreting at Bath, UK, I actually spent the previous 5 years studying and working in Australia. After I've got my bachelor's degree in finance and actuarial studies from ANU, I moved from Canberra to Sydney, hoping that I could, change course and become a freelance interpreter. But for that to happen, I need to pass my NAATI exam, which is the Australian National Accreditation for Professional Interpreters. And at the same time, I was, of course, applying for the University of Bath. So I reckon it would take me around, 6 months to a year to finish these two seemingly impossible tasks. But in the meantime, I need a source of income. That's why I found myself a part-time job at Oporto, a household name in Australia, but I don't think you guys know it. It's a fast food chain restaurant. And I'd say most Australians actually prefer Oporto over McDonald's, Burger King or KFC's. Now, the restaurant I was working for is at Rhodes, a suburb in northwest part of Sydney. On my first day, when I showed up, my manager said, "Look, Gavin, it sounds like you can speak some good English, so I want you to be at the front dealing with customers and all that. But I'm going to have to put you at the back for the first couple of months so that you'll know how everything works." I said, "Cool." Now, by at the back, she meant food preparation and all the hard, dirty labour work. And food preparation is just a fancy name saying making burgers, cooking fillets and, taking orders. I didn't fight it because she did promise me to rotate me to the front in 2 months' time. And I was quite excited on the other hand because at the front we've got a smoking hot Nepalese girl who looked just like Ariana Grande, the American singer. And we've got customers come over to our counter just to flirt with her every single day. So she's super hot and I was excited. But she didn't keep her promise, the manager. The whole time I was with that restaurant, I got stuck at the back with 2 Indian co-workers, with one of them being brother Chubby. As the name suggests, brother Chubby was a bit, not necessarily obese, but let's say it would be a good idea for him to lose some weight. And the reason why I called him brother Chubby instead of real name was because it's almost 6 years and I can't really remember his name. And that gives an idea how close we were as a team. And he was already in his 30s when I met him, so he was a lot older than me. He was very old, but single, not married, because nobody's interested in him. He was very lazy, and basically his life was in a mess. And I think that's probably why he was a bit obsessed with the women and sex, because whenever I was paired with him at the back, he'd be like, "Gavin, come!" And he would point outside to a female customer standing in the queue. 9 times out of 10, it should be a very good-looking Australian lady. He would point to that lady, saying this to me: "See that beautiful woman? What do you think?" Now, I can't do Indian accent, so please bear with me with that bit. But you get the idea. You can picture him speaking in that very typical Indian accent. And every time when this happened, it would be during the peak hours. So we've got loads of orders coming in. So I'll be so pissed. I didn't really have time for those games. So I just, simply rolled my eyes and said to him, "Man, could you please just do some orders, will you? you're too fat for her. You can do some work, maybe you can lose some weight, maybe she'll like you. But no, he won't listen. He won't listen, and he won't help me either. He'll be just standing there, relishing his view. Wow, what a beauty. And I'll be so pissed. But one day, there was a power cut in the building, so we all had to evacuate the building. While we were waiting outside, for the first time ever, me and him started to have some real conversation. Instead of talking about women or burgers, for the first time he told me about his family. To be honest, I was a bit surprised when he said, being an Indian, he said he didn't hate any Pakistani people, and he tried to be friends with all of them. He said this to me: my grandfather's brother fled from Punjab to Karachi in 1947 when the partition of India happened. And he went there alone, without siblings, without families, just all by himself. And nobody knows his whereabouts. I mean, Pakistani people and Indian people share the same roots, but our governments asked us to hate each other. I don't like that. I mean, we're just normal people. We should leave politics to the politicians. We could be friends. Not knowing where he was leading up to, I was a bit on the defensive, so I simply said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I mean, to be honest, the Indian government never say anything good about China either." Upon hearing that, I started to know, okay, where this man is coming from, and I was ready for a fight. Being an interpreting student myself, I immersed myself in politics, international relations, diplomacy all day long, day in, day out. So I could think of 100 ways to criticize India and to defend China. So I was ready for a fight. I was very confident. I spoke better English, I was better educated, and I was more knowledgeable on these matters. So I was ready to bring this Indian guy down on his knee. But all of a sudden, he threw me a curveball saying, "Let's be friends, Gavin. I'm very glad we had this conversation this afternoon. Your predecessor, John, another Chinese student who left before you came, John was a nice guy, but too bad he didn't speak much English. So all we could do together was to watch some porn together. He showed me his collection and I showed him mine. Other than that, we couldn't do anything else. But now we can have this conversation this afternoon. I'm very glad." At that moment, to be honest, I had no idea what to say, because as the saying goes, 大音希声，大槽无语. I hardly knew where to begin. Because first, I didn't really have a collection of porn to share with you, and second, more importantly, the Chinese government, unlike its Western counterpart, never say anything bad about any government or any countries. And why would Chinese people hate Indians? We only mind our own business. And I think you Indians just think too highly of yourselves, Whether or not you hate us, we mind our own business. And we Chinese people, with all due respect, we couldn't care less about you Indians. So that was what I was trying to say to him. But in the end, I didn't, because I could tell he was very sincere and he was trying to be nice. So was I. Several months later, it was on 5th of May 2017, I finally received my offer from the University of Bath. That was my dream come true. I was so happy. I still remember that moment as it was just yesterday, It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was woken up by a message. I remember thinking to myself, who the hell in their right mind would write to me that early in the morning? And then I thought, hang on, it could be from the UK. So I immediately shot up from my bed, checked my phone, and I must have read that email for dozens of times until I confirmed, yes, that was the offer I've been waiting for almost 6 months. I was so happy. I was over the moon. I was ecstatic, all the hard work and all the hardship, all the efforts, all the waiting finally paid off. I almost burst into tears, I remember I was, standing on my bed, jumping, and with a corner of the quilt stuffed in my mouth because I didn't want to wake the whole building up. I was just, jumping on my bed, screaming on the inside. I was so happy. And the next day I told my boss about this. I said, I'm leaving. I've got my NATU accreditation level 3 and I've got my offer from Bath. and so there was no more reason for me to stay in that country. And then I bid farewell to everybody in that restaurant, my Ariana Grande and the goddamn manager who didn't keep her promise, and the boss, and of course Chubby. And when brother Chubby learned about this, he was very surprised. He said, "Why Britain?" I said, "Because they've got the best interpreting program in the world. Be happy for me, brother." And he said, "Okay, but you have to be very careful with those Brits." I said, I thought you would be friends with everybody. I thought you would separate politics with, from normal people. He said, yeah, but Brits are a bit different, Remember my grandfather's brother? If it hadn't been the Brits, he would still be with us. Once again, at that moment, I didn't know what to say. So 5 seconds later, I was like, okay, fair enough. Thank you for advice. Well, ironically though, I said it in a very British accent, in a very British way. And he said, "Let's stay in touch, brother." Now, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm not staying in touch with you, you pervert. And I didn't even have his phone number, so I knew perfectly well I'm not going to stay in touch with him. And just like I thought, in the next 5 years, up until now, not even once have I ever thought of him. And last week, when I heard the terrorist attack in Karachi, where 3 Chinese teachers were killed by the BLA suicide bomber, I looked deeper into that issue, and unsurprisingly, you can find very few news reports from Western media. On the one Indian source, on the one Indian video, the most liked comments reads, "God bless BLA." And if you keep scrolling down, you can see everyone's praising the suicide bomber as a freedom fighter, a hero. "A free Balochistan from China," they chanted. And I was not even mad. It was just so pathetic, so sad. And when I did some more research, I realized, according to some people, the people in Balochistan had a separate national identity. They were forced to become a part of Pakistan back in 1947, again as a result of the hastily drawn border by the Brits. And that's when I thought of Chubby. Then I thought of Chubby's grandfather's brother, who fled to Pakistan all by himself when he was only a teenager. I wonder what happened to him later, and if he's still alive, what will his national identity be? And I thought of Chubby's very naive political opinion, leaving politics to politicians and making friends with everybody, including the Pakistani. I wonder how many people in India are thinking the same way. Judging by the comments, I'm afraid not many. And I'm also wondering what happened to Chubby himself later. Probably he's still working at that Porto. He's still single, still lazy, still, wasting his life away. I don't know. And that's the end of today's video. It's a very spontaneous video. I just feel like I should let you guys know. Maybe because today is the 5th anniversary of me receiving my offer from Bath, so I'm being a bit nostalgic. And yes, I'll continue making contents like this because I think storytelling is a very good way for language acquisition. So if you like today's content, I'll be very happy if you can give me 1.3. But anyway, I've got some videos coming up, so hopefully this time you won't have to wait very long, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you very much for listening.